In Jamaica, we traveled to Santa Cruz, about 2 hours west of Kingston. The town's one working front-end loader shoved mud off the only major roadway connecting this community to hard-hit.
All right, this morning, the Northern Caribbean is clearing up damage left by Hurricane Melissa. CBS News correspondent Jason Allen brings us the latest from Jamaica, where much of the country is still in the dark.
This morning, the people of Jamaica are picking up the pieces after Hurricane Melissa, as nearly 80% of the island nation still doesn't have power.
This is all the damage. Roof has gone, clothes has wet up, and all those stuff. I need some help. Please, I need some help.
From the air, devastation and ruin as far as the eye can see. Similar scenes playing out in eastern Cuba. People there combing through what's left after hurricane-force winds reduced homes and buildings to rubble, trying to salvage what they can, even in communities still completely flooded. Back in Jamaica, we traveled to Santa Cruz, about 2 hours west of Kingston. The town's one working front-end loader shoved mud off the only major roadway connecting this community to hard-hit Black River. Local politician Delroy Slowly.
I drove around, and it's really a horrible thing. This is the strongest storm we've ever seen. But in all of it, we still have to give God thanks for it. It could have been worse.
How could this have been worse?
Lives, many lives could have been lost. You see, properties can be replaced, but it's one life you have.
At St. Elizabeth Technical High School.
The students and teachers at this high school, they sheltered in one of the concrete buildings on campus, but this is one of their classrooms. The roof ripped off in the winds, and the walls, they are all piled on top of the desks and chairs where they would have been sitting on a normal day.
While the school is in recovery mode for now, Principal Keith Wellington is determined to give his students the support they need.
It's not even just about school and getting to do their exams, but the period of socialization, what they go through when they're at school with their friends. It helps them mentally. So it's important that we get back to some level of normalcy.
Jason Allen, Kingston, Jamaica.
The future of human longevity.
This is Black River, Jamaica, the epicenter, ground zero of Hurricane Melissa.
Want some money? Me no live nowhere. Hunger kill me, all of me house blood up. Every picnic no have no clothes, we no have no water, we no have no food. And you all this, we no live nowhere. Me hungry, we are starved.
This is Black River, Jamaica, the epicenter, ground zero of Hurricane Melissa. Coming in off the Caribbean Sea here, 185 miles per hour, Category 5. And I just want to walk you through this devastation because in person, it takes your breath away and it is remarkable. And we'll come over here and this tour will give you an idea of exactly the hell that everyone here went through. Look at this church if you can. And Jared Maloney, meteorologist and field producer behind the camera. You see this brick structure, been here a long time. Jared, look at that. There is nothing left. The entire interior and the roof collapsed down on it. And you see this street as we head down the center of it. So many people right now are suffering. There is a desperate need for water and food and supplies. Helicopters need to land here. Vehicles need to find their way in here through the compromised and destroyed roadways in the mountains. In the mountains, all the vegetation is gone. It is bare. It is town after town that is completely decimated by a mix of 185-mile-an-hour winds and rushing water and rain 2 to 3 feet. And we walk down the center of what used to be a bustling community and is now completely in ruin. These people without a home, many people in shelters, and I have to ask you, I'm going to come over and talk to you guys.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so very much for joining us here at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica for this awareness session, Rebuild with Standards. On behalf of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, I warmly welcome you. My name is Ellis James Sleng. I'm the Public Education and Customer Service Coordinator here at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, and I serve as your moderator. You have seen some gripping images or footage just now of the devastation caused by Hurricane Melissa. And we're very happy that you have joined us for this important discussion as we look today, as we seek to raise awareness about standards, building resilience, and safer construction practices in Jamaica. As many of you know, the Atlantic hurricane season officially began on June 1, and it continues through November 30. The Bureau of Standards Jamaica uses this period to remind Jamaicans of the importance of adhering to standards, codes, and the best practices that help to protect lives and property. Today's session is also a direct response to the lessons emerging from Hurricane Melissa, footage we saw earlier, which impacted Jamaica on October 28, 2025. Through our social media campaigns, our public education initiatives, and stakeholder engagement activities, the Bureau of Standards Jamaica has sought to remind citizens, builders, developers, contractors, engineers, and homeowners of the importance of compliance with Jamaica's national building codes, other relevant standards, and in fact, the Building Act. So the purpose of today's session is to increase awareness of Jamaica's national building codes and construction standards, to highlight best practices for resilient and safer construction, to remind the stakeholders of critical requirements that support structural integrity and public safety, to share, we hope, practical lessons for reconstruction and future building projects, and introduce participants to quality assurance, testing, and technical services available through the Bureau of Standards Jamaica and the Testing and Industrial Services branch here. We really hope that today's presentation will be informative and that it will be practical as we work together to build a safer, a stronger, and more resilient Jamaica. Before we go further, please allow me to share a few housekeeping reminders. We encourage persons to keep their microphones muted throughout the presentations. At the time at which we have question and answers and persons are able to share, we ask you to do that. If you choose to keep your camera on, please ensure that your surroundings are professional and free from distractions. Participants are encouraged to submit questions in the chat throughout the session. At the end of all our presentations today, we will facilitate a question and answer session. And during that segment, participants may also use a raise hand feature if you'd like to ask your question directly. Of course, we encourage respectful and professional engagement throughout the session. And if you have not renamed, we ask that you just ensure that your name is correctly displayed. And if it is that you're from a particular entity and you want to highlight that, then we ask that you ensure that that is done as well. So we saw a few videos earlier, and these videos, I believe, remind us of the realities faced by many Jamaicans during severe weather events. It really was devastating, and many of us are, some persons are apprehensive about this current hurricane season. The videos highlighted some of the impact experienced by communities and underscore why resilient construction and adherence to standards are so important. We're going to ask Kimo to just prepare to share with us one other video very briefly before we transition to our main presentations. And so, Kimo, if you could just highlight one of the other videos for us as we share.
Everything. That's my baby. I have to run out with my baby.
So
Nothing.
You carried him.
In my hand.
So you're telling me you stood on top of this toilet?
I was saved by a toilet.
We're still hoping. We thought the rescue team will be like yesterday, like it's been 2 days.
Yeah. This is the worst thing Jamaica ever woke up in.
It's as bad as we feared, but we just weren't able to see because of the lack of communication. But finally, with the road open, we have arrived here in Black River. This is as bad of damage as you're ever going to find in any hurricane, from Dorian, Michael, Beryl, you name it. This is catastrophic. Every direction, everywhere you walk, everywhere you look, nothing is the same.
When a disaster reaches this scale, the destruction speaks for itself. Roofs are gone, walls torn apart, lives are upended. But that's not the story. The story is what's left standing and who. They made it through the wind, the surge, but the aftermath, that's a different kind of storm. It's the hard part, surviving what's left. Even the last place of refuge, the Black River Hospital, lies in ruins.
I think everything you're saying has been demolished. What wasn't demolished?
The only thing that has been spared for the most has been the emergency room, just the downstairs section. Because I said the admin block is upstairs. Everything else has gone. Every single thing.
Along the coast,
Thank you for viewing that powerful video. The images, the experiences captured in that video remind us that resilience begins long before a storm arrives. It begins during planning, design, building. It begins at the point of inspection, and of course, it continues through the point of maintenance. To guide us through these important considerations, we have brought together a panel of experienced professionals whose expertise has helped shape building practices and quality assurance systems in Jamaica. And we're hoping that as they speak today, we will be reminded of what we need to do as together we rebuild with standards. So I'm going to introduce our first two presenters at this point. Our first presenter is Mr. David Allen. He's a professional engineer and consultant with the National Building Code Committee. He lectures in civil engineering at the University of Technology, Jamaica. And before that, he served as a senior engineer here at the Bureau of Standards, Jamaica, and a director of technical services at the Ministry of Transport, Works, and Housing. David continues to provide valuable volunteer service to the Bureau as chairman of the Road Construction Technical Committee, and we are really grateful that he is joining us today. He was a core member of the technical team responsible for developing Jamaica's updated national building codes, including the Jamaica Fire Code and the Jamaica Existing Building Code. He has more than 30 years of experience in standards development, structural assessment, and design, and his work focuses on ensuring that Jamaica's buildings and infrastructure are designed and constructed to withstand extreme events and perform safely throughout their life cycle. Today, David will present on Building First, the Right Time, best practices from Jamaica's national building codes for resilient construction. Welcome, David. And I ask us to just join me in welcoming David to the virtual platform.
Thank you.
So, David, you're muted. And as good as you are, we can't hear you unless you unmute.
Okay, let me share now. Right, so pleasant morning to you all. Right, so I'm presenting on Building Right the First Time, the Jamaica National Building Code Best Practices for Resilient Construction. Right. Okay, all right. So the Jamaica National Building Code. I know that most of us here, probably based on your invitation or your invitation to the presentation, would be exposed to some extent to the Jamaica National Building Code, right? Some time ago back, before 2018 or maybe 2009 or so, there was a document that was considered to be the building code. One single document, perhaps no more than about 100 pages or so. But after that, Jamaica have developed international codes, right? In fact, I would say internationally connected codes, or codes that are actually based on international standards. And so what we have now is called is an amalgamation of even what exists before, called the Jamaica application document to the international code, codes, right? But right now, our codes are pretty much equivalent to the International Code Council codes. And so we have much broader spectrum in terms of coverage for things in Jamaica concerning buildings, infrastructure, and so on. So on your screen, what you're seeing right now, I'm just kind of give a quick browse of what the National Building Code constitutes, right? So it includes the Jamaica Building Code. And you might think, why? The Jamaica Building Code is not everything. But that is just one document that normally deals with structures beyond 300 meters square. Then we have something called the Jamaica Small Building / Residential Code. And this deals with buildings that are less than 300 meters square, right? In average about 3,000 square feet. And we have what we call the Jamaica Existing Building Code. And you say, wow, Jamaica Existing Building Code. So this particular document now speaks to buildings that already exist. And if they already exist, is there a code compliant requirement for them? And yes, there is. And of critical need or necessity, put it that way, you have the Jamaica Fire Code. And the Jamaica Fire Code most times will be connected to the Jamaica Building Code, because once you're building to the Jamaica National Building Code, which means the larger structures, all other codes have to follow under that. The Fire Code, Plumbing Code, Electrical Code, quite a few codes. So the Jamaica Building Code isn't one document. It's a suite of documents, about 11, 12 document that covers construction in Jamaica. Right, so for short, we just say JNBC, which is just to say Jamaica National Building Code, but it comprises a lot of documents, right? So why does it matter to build, now coming to the heart of the matter, structures that resist, that can stand, resilient structures. Jamaica is a small island, island developing state, right? is exposed to, we call them SIDs, small island developing states, right? We're exposed to hurricanes, storm surge, and earthquakes, right? But primarily, one of the things that we face, especially given on the heel, we'd say, of Melissa, is hurricanes, right? Hurricanes happen, but what I would want to say, and most of us here, if you're in the building practice, know that though it is that earthquakes are significant in our Jamaican space, the way we build, especially given concrete structures and low-rise concrete structures, these structures survive pretty much well under earthquakes, right? Because more than 90% of the construction that we have in the country are residential structures, and they are maybe not more than 2 stories high. And we have a practice in Jamaica to basically, in a sense, use a lot of concrete, maybe a lot of steel, right? But we'll come to that in terms of steel as well, whether we're using, it's just a large amount of steel which is necessary. But we are pretty much good at using a lot of concrete. But what we find is that in many cases, the structures that fail are structures that we call are not engineered, or have not the input of design professionals. So we have here cost compliance versus non-compliance. Compliance costs include the proper construction, right? Not necessarily more costly construction. So if one should look at compliance costs, right? We may say upfront monetary outlays, right? Permit maybe $135 per meter square, maybe give and take based on what the council may charge. The design professional fee may come in somewhere between 7 and 15% of construction costs. And of course, if you're using high-grade material, you may want to use high-grade material than anything that will basically meet standard, because you want to resist winds of up to 150 miles per hour. In fact, in today's days, we have to be designing closer to 200 miles per hour. So when we speak to non-compliance now, what is the cost of non-compliance? You're going to have fines, which the municipalities will charge, right? Possibly between 1 and 2 million. You're going to have costs in terms of demolition, time loss and all that, loss of structure. And of course, if the insurance companies discover that perhaps, somewhere along the line, there was some short-changing of building material quality, right? They are going to be looking for ways not to pay, right? And so you may find that even though structure might be insured, some discovery might otherwise disqualify. All right, so I pull a quick case here, right? And kind of making a case as to why we need to be using this motivation to people to tell them that, listen, you need to comply with the codes because it's going to cost. So if I were building a building, 2,000 square feet, right? The construction cost could be somewhere in the vicinity of $50 million. But the design fee might be $4 million. And person will say, God, can't pay that money, right? Because you're going to cover the design for the engineer, the architecture, and all the drawings will come through approved, right? And so that might be a compliance cost. But the roof of that building, which is a $50 million house or so on, could possibly be around $3 million or 3.5. I'm not the quantity surveyor, but I expect that the price is going to be quite significant, somewhere about there. But what's the cost if you're losing your roof, right? Reconstruction could come up to over 4. I said 4 million, but obviously you're going to have to do some demolition and reconstruction. The contents of your house is lost, and a lot of persons experience that in Melissa, right? They could be losing up to $4 million, right, of costs in terms of their furniture or otherwise other content of the structure. You're going to have costs to relocate because persons have to move from wherever they were to somewhere else. Maybe the catch in Jamaican sense with a neighbor, or go and stay with a relative. Or otherwise, you may have to rent somewhere, so there's a cost to that. So the cost of the loss is well over, in this case, so I might quick look, 8.5 million, just for a house of 50 million, more than twice the cost of design fees. So the cost of non-compliance versus compliance isn't just a red tape thing, right? In fact, this is the real insurance, right? That you're building into your rebuild, right? So you'd have seen a video in the early part of this webinar, looking at Hurricane Melissa's aftermath. And some of the failures that we'll find, we look at the structure right there on screen, you're seeing a roof, well, what remains of a roof. You can see twisted sheets, you can see what we call rafters. Most of you here might know what rafters are. It's the purlins, which the one runs across, right? And rafters there. But the roof sheet is twisted and gone. And to your right, there's another image. And this is a significant loss now because we can see a concrete structure with timber roof, right? But of course, there's also some concrete member that is resting on the roof. Obviously, I will say as an engineer that this couldn't be something that, you know, really met any particular engineering or code standards, right? You can see this concrete slab. I don't show where it fell from, but it is not supposed to be on the roof, right? And we can see there a member here looking like some kind of a beam or whatever, but it still is all twisted, right? So the structure has failed. And then you can see other damage as well, where a car here is smashed. And many people could expect that in the case of Hurricane Melissa, a lot of damage occurred in terms of the structures being demolished. Demolished by the hurricane, yes, but also other things that are, of course, non-building structure, like your car or otherwise, is damaged because of the failure of structure. So there's significant loss for non-compliance. So what I want to focus here today on, and there are much things to could, is the roof structure, because the majority of failure that occurred in Hurricane Melissa had to do with roof. And so the roofs have getting a very bad, getting a bad name, right? I would want to say though that since Hurricane Gilbert, right, there have been some improvement in the construction industry. You will find a lot of what we call hurricane straps being used. You may also find that the whole, we call a hold down bolt or anchorage bolt, if you can see in this case right here, the roof, the sheets are still, the rafters are in place, everything is there. Most of the times, I mean, some cases, the entire roof structure is lifted off. But just to focus on the fact that many cases, or the majority of cases, the entire roof isn't blown off, which is indicating to us that the anchor bolt that holds down a wall plate is in place. And we see the rafters in place. So we're going to know that the rafters remain because they were strapped, by and large, right? So what is then therefore missing? Right? And I wanted to kind of emphasize this because in a Jamaican case, it's not so much that you have, you know, the rafters not being held down or the wall plates not being held down, because we have learned a lot from Gilbert, right? But what I'm seeing, a glaring absence is what we call this thing called the sarking, right? We want to look back quickly at this roof, right? And in other cases, in many cases, you'll see you can look straight through when the sheet is lifted off, straight through into the house, right? Because there is the missing sarking, right? And this is what the sarking will look like. And I mean, not probably as smooth as this, but in Jamaican context, we will call it, we use things that we call tongue and groove boarding or T111, right? Sheets that are placed atop the rafters. And then on top of that, we will put your purlins and then the roof sheet. So what is happening is that for a situation in Jamaica, what we are finding is that, from my findings here, is that when you have that absent member called a sarking, which is a part, which is in the code, so it's not something you're putting in new, it's already there. This is a snapshot from the small building residential code. It shows you this thing called ply sarking or similar, which is not done, and clearly because it's going to cost some money. Right? But if that member were in place, what you'll find is that the sheeting would have a proper base to go on. Yes, well, because it goes normally on top of these purlins, right? And the exposure to damage of your structure would not be as significant because wind would not blow straight into the house. Water coming from in the hurricane event will not get in. And therefore, your roof by and large will survive, even if you have stripping of the roof sheeting, right? So the structural detail is important, right? A weak roofing sheet support is what I'm finding to be a major issue in the structure of roofs, right? You guys, I mean, many of you may know this already when you look at the ring beam on top of that, the wall plate on top of that, the hurricane straps, right? But that member that normally goes just before the roof sheet, which is called a sarking, is in many cases, and in almost all the cases that I've seen, absent. So applying the Jamaica National Building Code best practices, right? And I'm trying to keep with time as well. You want to follow a particular process, right? The design is important, right? The design is important. And so the general thing under the Building Act may only require you to use an engineer when it is that your structure is above 3,000 square feet, or otherwise somewhere in the vicinity of 300 meters square. And so so the structure may not have a design professional, but it's advisable. And in many cases, I think the councils have that duty as well. When they look at the building and they say, no, it's still less than 3,000, but in our view, this is going to need. And so you have to look for, so the practitioners must look for reasons, right? Not undue, but reasons which will require the design professional to make a way in. So you move from a design, the permit, you go from permit to the construction, and the construction phase, which in this case is where you have quite a bit of inspection occurring. And what we want to be suggesting is that some inspection happen at the roof level, because from my understanding, at the roof level, that's not where the municipalities come in. They want to see that the trench is dug, and the reinforcements are put in place. But before the concrete is cast, they will come and look. They will now see at the roof, at the concrete roof. I don't show really what happened at the timber roof situation, but I mean, and I can be corrected, what level of scrutiny occurs there. But even with the level of scrutiny, what I'm also seeing is that in many of the cases, there is not an insistence on that member called the SARKIN to be used. And so if it's not, your roof is actually impaired. So you have the non-compliance often occur based on inadequate drawing details, because one touched this just now because we can't do everything. But what I find as well is that without having the design professional in there, you have cracks in your drawing, right? You have a loophole, because you have somebody who's not trained in engineering, trained in architecture, trained to a certain professional level, doing the drawings and no oversight. Because in many cases, the detail that is necessary is absent. And for those who are in the construction, you realize that we're talking about, even the concrete slabs, right? That you have over support bar. These bar must be at a particular place, not just trample down to the bottom of the slab. But there are certain placement and certain details that are critical to avoid failure, which the design professional is able to pick up. Missing load path. And when we talk about missing load path here, we are saying this whole load transfer, it travel from the roof to the foundation. And when we say missing, really, there are gaps. So the connections are important. The connection of the sheet itself, the roof sheet, to the purlins, the connection of the purlins to the raft, to the sarking to the rafters, and all those connections from the top all the way down from that, so that that's a roof connected to the wall pinned down properly to the foundations. And so on. And so all of those connection areas must be solid, right, to avoid failure. So we start applying the best practices. We need to have weak roofs, members, the purling, we're finding the absence of that. We have weak roof, the wall ties. Sometimes I'm saying, even though it's a general thing to look at, but we are improving in that quite a bit. Poor foundation anchorage. I'm not going to get into that detail though. But then what I want to end with though here, right, is to indicate a kind of a checklist for engineers, builders, and inspectors, right? Because it's important to ensure that the load path is continuous. The load path, right? Mean that there's no gaps, there's no break. So in past times, we may find that we had a gap where it comes to the rafter to the wall plate. So we say hurricane straps. So we basically close that little loop. But the loop that I'm saying that we're not closing is that roofing sheet to the purlins, right? Because that is because the purlins are really the sarkins are really basically absent. We must ensure that the details match the drawing, right? And this is for builders. This is for even the owners are the persons in charge of the whole construction process. If it's not in the drawing, don't build it, right? Right? You have a common failure where contractor operators, we call value engineers. They may say, engineer don't know what I'm doing now. This is too much steel, right? or we can put that there, or stretch that a little bit, because in their experience they have built buildings that are okay, because they have not heard that they collapse. So they find a way to cut down the cost. So you tell the contractor, we want a 6-inch slab, can we go down to 5-inch, or want a 8-inch slab? They say, no man, this is foolishness. 8-inch of slab, no, that can't work. We will put it down to 6, and we save a lot of money. That's about quarter of the whole cost already, or somewhere about there. So we can then say, all right, different ways in which we can cut costs. And so therefore, inspection must be very vigilant to see that the contractors are not cutting down on the thickness of the slabs and different members to save, right? So we also want to see that materials are certified. So therefore, for builders, that timber grade and fastener, even the fasteners have standards. So you must know what kind of grade. I think in many cases, you go to the hardware, they probably don't have any information on these fasteners. So we should, and just have a touch fasteners, because I know somebody may ask, what about the fasteners? Yes, we want to move to screws instead of using these nails, right? And so the code may not tell you that, right? That you have to do that. And this is where there's an opportunity to upgrade the code on our experience, because the screws will help to hold the sheets down, right? A bit more, right, as well. And of course, nails are basically things that we don't really want. No, so I should mention that. So a bad concrete plus good design still leads to failure, right? So you have design, and many times the designers may do that. So you say, yes, we have the design, but you go to the site to make the concrete now, and the concrete and the mixers say, all right, this is too difficult to want the concrete to move a little, make it soupy. Right, and so they want the soupy concrete so they can flow and fill, and they can have a good jolly time doing the work. So essentially, you end up with a very poor concrete, because from an engineering standpoint, anything less than cement to or water to cement less than they say 0.5. So you're gonna have about half the amount of water to the cement. They say, whoa, we're gonna work that out, right? It's too stiff, can't use that. So you don't want to vary too much from that. But when you have that water concrete, clearly this is weak. And guess what? It costs you nothing less. It's the same amount, I should say, nothing more. Only that you probably a little water cost, a little more water cost, and the water isn't really expensive anyway. So just adding more water leads to weaker concrete than what you really need. So we look at hazard specific feature are not skipped. So in Jamaica, we're looking for wind, surge, seismic, fire. Double check that the roof geometry for wind, foundation, for roof geometry is suitable. Normally, you don't want to, you want some engineering input, because sometimes it's not a matter of that the roof is flat, but because there is no engineering input in it, right? So fire separation is a critical thing as well, why you want to look at, because in the case of fire, you want to see that, and especially now because they are using a lot of what we call building systems coming into the country, right? And you want to see that those walls that are separating different family units, that they are fire rated, right? You're looking normally for a 1-hour fire rating for partition walls, and for roof, you're going upstairs, you want to see that fire doesn't start upstairs and come down right through your roof. You don't want to connect it to another household, and they are cooking over there and you are sleeping. And so you're basically exposed because you don't know that a fire could have started. So therefore, the fire code is critical. And so fire separation is important, right? And also sometimes what we do the code is that you may have detached unit buildings are not actually touching on each other. But where you have these party walls, you need to see that these walls are fire rated, right? Not a simple thing, right? So here, we mentioned here, document everything. So in the construction process, it's important to take photos, right? To register, to see what is happening, because for especially structural assessment after that, or to do the as-built drawings, which are necessary, right? You want to be able to verify that what was on the design is what was built. Because when it is covered up, that is going to be a very expensive venture. sometimes almost impossible to determine what was done before. So you really want to track the progress of the construction, whether it be inspectors as well, whether it be the builders, whether it be engineer, or simple your own construction, right? You as a owner, or that you really want our employer to do the construction, that our developer, put it that way, you want to track the process. Also, not only to verify, but to also prove that what is built is according to plan, according to design, and therefore it is good for everybody to be assured of resilience. I'll stop right there. Thank you.
David, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much, David. I saw that you had to hold yourself there because you were ready to go for another 20 minutes. And we're taking note of the points you made, and we remind the persons that they can always just drop questions in the chat, and persons will seek to respond. I tell you, one thing, David, that you said there, and it resonates with me. Coming from the country, you always hear these people, we have to make it soupy, man. The concrete have to soupy. From the tomb, from the grave, right up to the two-story building, everything must be soupy. And that is a challenge. And thank you so very much for bringing it out to us, pointing this out. We will take the questions at the end, the question and answer session, after we have done all three presentations. So for those of us who are in the audience participating online, just please note your questions or drop them in the chat. So let me take this time now to introduce our next presenter, who is the Acting Deputy Chief Engineering Officer at the Kingston and the St. Andrew Municipal Corporation. So David spoke to us about best practices, but here we are going to get into what are the requirements, what is required under law. So Mr. Dennis Hall has more than 31 years experience designing and successfully implementing a wide range of municipal projects. His expertise in coordinating multidisciplinary teams, managing complex engineering initiatives, and delivering high-quality results has earned him significant respect within the engineering profession. His commitment to technical excellence, detailed planning, and structured project management has contributed to the successful delivery of numerous projects that support community development and public infrastructure. So I'm sure that if you hear Mr. Hall's name, you don't hear about any overruns on the public budget. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Dennis Hall, Acting Deputy Chief Engineering Officer at the Kingston and the St. Andrew Municipal Corporation. Mr. Hall, over to you.
Morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Ellis. David, you did very well, I believe. You mentioned some of the most critical areas that we have been trying to get the public to understand in terms of how to build and what you need to build. So yesterday, the Jamaica Observer featured the KCAC placing a notice on a site in Patrick City where the gentleman had gone ahead to construct a metal frame structure, approximately 1,000 square feet or so, on the banks of the gully. And so we served him the relevant notices and asked him why he committed the breach. And he said, well, it's just a temporary structure he was constructing, and he did not see the need to apply to the KCAC for a permit. Most Jamaicans, well, not most, a minority of Jamaicans believe that if it's a temporary structure, they're not going to need a permit from the KCAC. If it's a small addition, renovation, you're not going to need a permit. They only try to seek a permit if they're going through the bank or if they're on a main road. And for some reason, the authority might catch them. So one developer told me that his approach is a catch me if you can. He starts the construction, and then if you catch him, then he'll try and encourage the owner to apply. But that's not how we want it to be. And so today we're going to highlight some of the sections within the Act that encourages builders and owners to submit application and get the requisite approval. Mr. Allen had gone through several structural stuff, and so my job here is to go over the regulation mainly. And of course, I'll touch on some of the structural components that are involved. And so on screen now, you're seeing where in 2018, we tried to modernize the country's construction and the development of the laws and to establish adaptation of the National Building Code. Aline spoke about that earlier, to improve disaster resilience and mandated permits for all construction work and empower local authorities and the Jamaica Fire Brigade to strict monitor of buildings, right? So what I did here was just to take sections of the Act. It consists of probably 70, 80 sections. So what I did was also take out some of the critical components so we can have a discussion around some of these. And so Section 3 spoke about regulating building work and change of building use by requiring the obtaining of a building permit in connection with building work and change of building use so as to protect the public and public safe health, other relevant public interests in consideration, right? Section 8 spoke about functions of each local authority. In its capacity as a local building authority, administrator, and enforce this Act, the National Building Code and any other regulation made under this Act wherein the area of jurisdiction of the local authority. Accept and consider applications for building permission in respect of all proposed buildings within the jurisdiction again. And C, ensure the building work within its area or jurisdiction is carried out in accordance with the Building Act. And we can go on. As I said, I'm just going to browse through some of the sections, right? So I'm on what is building work? Some persons feel that if you are doing a addition inside the house, they don't need permit. If they are doing it within one floor, they don't need permit. Well, this is saying something different. Building work means the design, construction, erection, alteration, repair, extension, modification, demolition, or removal of building, and all activities relating thereto. Right? So you really don't have an excuse not to submit a plan. And on this side, it said the building means a domestic building, a public building, a building of a warehouse class, and any other physical structure, whether temporary structure or not. And as I'm going to emphasize temporary because the gentleman that I mentioned earlier did say that his structure was just temporary. So right here, we're seeing clearly that you need a permit. Any part of the structure and any architectural or engineering product or work erected or construed on, over, or under the sea, on the land or the sea, or other body of water. That simply means that if you're going to excavate, you're going to need a permit. If you're going to go above the land, suspended the building, you're going to also need a permit. All right, I'm running up to Section 17 of the Act. A person shall not carry out building works unless a building permit in respect of the building work has been issued to him. I think that is straightforward. And B spoke about where applicable, a planning permit has been issued to him on the TCPA, that is by NEPA. So it is clear right here that a building permit is critical. Section 18 spoke about a person who proposed to carry out building work shall apply in the prescribed form and manner to the local authority. And if you're unaware, what we have at the local authorities, KCC, including the other parishes, we have application forms that you are required to fill out with some other statutory documentations, titles, survey ID report, and property taxes that you will need to supply us with when you're applying for a building permit. Section 28, the local authority may suspend building permit, and it tells you why we may submit it. If the permit holder has failed to pay any fee or other charge required by this act, the National Building Code, or any other regulation, the permit holder is in breach of any provision of this act. So this is telling you that even though if you have a permit, we can also rescind the permit if necessary. And that is if you breach any form of the permit, if you are building in contravention of what you got approval for. Section 28, the local authority may revoke. So here we are saying that, we can suspend and we can also revoke. So even if you have an approval, we can say, look here, this approval, it's no longer valid. And so we're going to stop it. All right, we jump down now to section 33. The local authority shall monitor the progress of building work permitted under this act, as often as may be necessary. Now, this is critical because sometimes when we visit a location, persons might be saying, why are we here? And of course, they're not understanding the reason why we're there. Sometimes, of course, they are building illegally, so they're not sure of the conditions and the regulations, right? So Section A says, survey any building or building work placed under its supervision. So if you have a permit, we are allowed to come. If you don't have a permit, we're still going to come. All right. Section 38. A building official, and that's what they call us. A lot of people call us building inspector and stuff, but the Building Act spoke about a building official. A building official may, at all reasonable time upon production of his authority, if so required, at any stage of the building work, enter any land and inspect the building or building work. As I said before, we are authorized to do this. And so 39 says, a person commits an offense, unreasonably refuses to admit a building official to inspect the land or any building there is. Willful obstruction of the building official acting in the exercise of his function under Section 38 from carrying out the inspection shall be liable on conviction to a penalty. And so it is real. We have situations where officers are locked out of sight, of construction site, and some are locked in to construction site. And so we're just advising members that we are authorized to inspect without obstruction. Section 63, there shall be a right of appeal through the tribunal. Now, if you believe that a permit was refused for whatever reason, you have a right to appeal. And you have to appeal through the minister. And so I'll end the regulation aspect with Section 80 of the Act. A building official shall not be personally liable for any act or the fault of the local authority to which he is employed, which is done or omitted to be done in good faith in the exercise of any power. So this is just saying that we are human and we might make a mistake. And so we're not totally liable if we can resolve the issue through even the same tribunal as I mentioned. So I've dealt with a bit of the regulation on the first part of the slide, and I'm now gonna look at some of the lessons learned and what we can do to help to make the buildings safer. And so we have identified a few issues. Mr. Allen had gone through foundations and walls and roof. And so we believe that he is right on point. And so one of the first things we want to look at is buildings that are in low-lying areas and the floor level. Now, the building code will tell you that you can go a minimum of 150 millimeter above the grade.
Hello?
Hello? Yeah, the building code will tell you that you can go 150 millimeter above grade. But if you are in a low-lying area, we are going to definitely recommend that you go 900 millimeter minimum above the grade. And areas in Kingston like New Haven and other areas in the close to the seaside, we'll recommend that they go a minimum of 900 millimeter, and this will provide a level of retention time, hoping that the water will subside and recede and give them a little space or to stay into the dwelling a little longer. The other thing that I want to look at is the roof. And Mr. Allen spoke about this and the socking and stuff. But what I believe is a type of disaster, I'll call it, for the purpose of the discussion, is termite infestation. We have looked at flooding, we have looked at wind and other type of disasters, but we have not looked at termite. Now, Mr. Allen spoke about the hold-on bolt on the wall plate, and I'm identifying this on the screen. This is the wall plate here, and the hold-on bolt is normally somewhere here, probably every 24 or 36 inches, 900 millimeter or so. Now, if the termite gets into the board, into the wall plate and destroys the wall plate, whenever the wind comes, you won't have a roof, because the wall plate is what really anchors the rafters, right? And so oftentimes, whenever we cut the wall plate or any timber at all, the timbers are normally treated, but if you cut the timber, you have exposed the end of the timber. So you'll need to retreat that area. So cutting the wall plate and leaving it will expose it to termite. And here in this slide here, we're seeing how termite did a number on this piece of lumber. And so we're looking at trying to hold down the rafters using hurricane straps pinned to the wall. If it's concrete, in the event that the wall plate is gone, you'll still have some amount of security. And we can also use this method, which is to anchor it inside of the beam. Now, the other thing that we have to look at is, Mr. Allen mentioned it again, in Gilbert, we had several contractors created in Gilbert, I'll say, because when the roof in 1988 it was, when the roof went, several persons became contractors. And so they are now senior builders today. And they are probably untrained and still using the same methodology to construct buildings. And so we have to be careful with that. Now, some of what I saw in St. Elizabeth is because there was probably a lack of power tools, and so a lot of hammer and nail situation was used to put on roofs. And so just 2 slides to go. I also want to look at window sills, where a lot of buildings, especially those where the sill of the window is not properly designed, water can get underneath the sill, pass in the sealant, and get inside. So we're recommending that they modify the sill somehow to get the water out. We're also recommending the use of metal window shades, and those can serve as window shutters. And finally, critical to the industry, the batching, we spoke about that earlier, where we're making the cement, the concrete soupy. And we are not seeing slum tests being done on many sites. And so there are times when we end up with a lot of honeycomb here that can cause from poor mixtures as well, no vibration. And so we believe that batching is critical. And that is something that we need to play a more pivotal role in the built industry. And that's the end of my presentation.
Mr. Hall, thank you very much. Thank you for bringing some of those things to the fore. An important point you've shared is the matter that so many contractors come to the fore, sometimes in the face of disaster and in the absence of technical competence in areas, some people just assume the role. And some of these persons now need to be brought into the fold. So thank you very much for that presentation. And I see a question in the chat, and we're going to take that question later on. I'm going to ask Kimo to share. I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your presentation at this time to allow for Kimo to share another presentation, another video presentation.
The town of Black River on Jamaica's southwest coast. This was where Hurricane Melissa unleashed its worst. Everywhere, evidence of the destructive power of 185-mile-an-hour winds. And on its ruined streets, 3 days on from the storm, desperation. Aid, which is arriving in the capital, hasn't found its way here.
I want to know. Come. No, minister, nobody hasn't reached there. No supplies. No helicopter help, nothing. We are hungry here now, so what we can get until they assist us, we will take it.
Tracy Ann rode out the storm at home, trapped upstairs as the ground floor flooded. Now she's back to see what remains of her cafe and clothes shop on the seafront.
It was just shocking to see everything inside. It's washed to the road, it's the tables, the dining tables, the furniture. It's crazy.
The town's hospital had part of its roof peeled off by the storm. It is still just functioning, staff having done their best to keep their patients safe.
We had to carry them to the top floor, which essentially caved in, so we had to move them back to the ground floor. In the accident and the emergency area, it started flooding, so we had to be there pushing out the water.
No way forward? Just getting to the areas worst hit is an effort in itself. More than 100 roads blocked. Communications hit hard. The fear that the death toll will rise further as authorities reach more cut-off areas. In Santa Cruz, inland from Black River, Sonia is doing what little she can to recover her livelihood, drying out storm-damaged stock from her shop. But the roof is missing and she doesn't have the money to get it replaced.
I feel cast down, discouraged, like I would have just give it up. But I still doing what I can do. I don't know, I just trying. It's terrible, it's terrible. Everything gone.
People here are used to the ravages of hurricane season, but those hurricanes are now being fueled by a warming Caribbean Sea. As Jamaicans start to recover from the strongest storm in their country's history, the fear is they may not have to wait too long for one stronger still.
Thank you, Kimo. And thanks again, Mr. Hall, for sharing your expertise and your practical insights. Now, audience, we have heard about the importance of building codes, resilient design, and the sound construction practices. However, effective implementation also requires testing, verification, quality assurance, and technical support. Now, to discuss how the Bureau of Standards Jamaica supports these efforts and supports the industry, we now turn to our final presenter for today, Mr. Richard Lawrence. He serves as the manager of the Testing and Industrial Services branch here at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, holds a master's degree in sustainable energy and climate change and a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. Of course, he has also done extensive work with ISO 9001 and ISO 17025 international standards. In his role at the Bureau, Mr. Lawrence oversees activities that help ensure that construction materials, roads, buildings, and infrastructure meet recognized safety and quality requirements. Today, however, Mr. Lawrence will speak on the BSJ supporting your resilient reconstruction plans. Please join me in welcoming to the virtual podium, Mr. Richard Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Ellis. Good morning, everyone. You have heard the requirements of the building code. You have heard the requirements of the municipal authority. And those are mandatory requirements. But how do you meet them? That is where the Bureau of Standards comes into play. I'm here to share with you what is it that we do to support you recovering and being resilient. So in my presentation today, I'm going to look on the vulnerability that Jamaica has for disaster, the Bureau at a glance, and our quality assurance assistance that we have for your resilience. Now, Jamaica is an island that is affected by numerous disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, flooding, drought, and it is compounded by the fact of large areas of poverty. There's environmental degradation, this movement to urban areas, and as we heard from the two previous speakers, some poorly constructed infrastructure. Some of it is through squatting. And over time, we have seen some significant disasters affecting Jamaica. Port Royal earthquake back in 1692, the Kingston earthquake in 1907. I have to say that because some of us are born in the 1900s. And Hurricane Gilbert 88 that cost us over $800 million in damages. And in recent time, we had Hurricane Melissa in October last year that affected us in the tune of over $8.8 billion or 41% of our GDP. So Jamaica is no stranger to disaster. So it's important that we are resilient. Resilience is not an option. With all of these disasters over the years, and we now being in the hurricane season for 2026, what do we do to prepare going forward? My suggestion, partner with the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. And why do I say partner? Because we are here to help. This is a major news alert. Breaking news, breaking news. The BSJ is not a regulator. If you knew this, put a 1 in the chat. If you knew this, that the Bureau of Standards Jamaica is no longer a regulator, put a 1 in the chat. Let me see the ones in the chat. Yes, we're not a regulator. We were, but we're no longer. What we do is to facilitate trade, and we assist in business development through our core functions, conformity assessment, which includes certification, sampling, and testing. We develop standards and codes of practice like the building code, And we also offer services in metrology, industrial and scientific, which includes calibration. Now, the area that I am involved in is focused on the construction sector. There are many services that we offer to help with trade, but my area is focusing on the construction sector. So the laboratories that I lead are the only accredited government construction labs in Jamaica and the Caribbean. There are few construction labs in Jamaica that are accredited. 2 are accredited for internal quality assurance, while the Bureau of Standards labs are accredited to assist every single Jamaican, whether in the private sector or the public service. So we conduct tests on cement, we conduct tests on aggregates and soil, and concrete and masonry units. I'm going to go into some more details of the services that we offer. You heard David said earlier about new billing systems coming to Jamaica. And I can tell you something, I've been at the Bureau for more than 2 decades, and I've seen new ideas of construction from all over the world over the last 20 years. What we do under the Building Act is to provide an evaluation of these proposed billing systems to be used in Jamaica to see if they meet the building code. If they're not meeting the building code, you can't use them in Jamaica. And the billing systems, they might have some compliance issues that need to be corrected before it can be implemented. So we provide that assessment. So persons who want to use a billing system from whichever part of the world in Jamaica, we provide a service that can help you to determine whether the system can be used here based on the billing code requirements. There is a desire for us to have all construction labs in Jamaica accredited. We are here to help. We're not going to brag and say we're the only one now and we want it to be there, that position indefinitely. No, we want every construction lab to be accredited. Right now, accreditation is voluntary. We have opted to go to the very highest level of international recognition for our labs. We think it's very important, and we're encouraging other labs to come on board. But to demonstrate that a lab is competent, they need to have some external validation of the operation. What the Bureau of Standards is doing is providing an interlab comparison service where you have a lab, it is not yet accredited, you want to check to see that your technicians, your engineers are conducting the tests on a construction material according to international best practices. Come and speak to us. We will do comparison not with just 1 lab, 2 lab, 4 lab, but multiple labs across Jamaica and the Caribbean to help you to determine your competence. So that is a service that we offer to labs. We offer quality assurance for construction projects in general. So if it is that you have construction already up, so the municipal authority wants to know, do you have test results for this column, this beam that is already up? We can do non-destructive testing. So we can look on your various components, your slab, your beams, your column, and do an indicative test to see the strength of the concrete. Now, this is not just for construction sites for new elements. You might have a home that you want to go upstairs and you're not sure if it can take the load for a second story. Talk to us, because our service is not only for the big private companies, it is for the small homeowners. We do non-destructive tests. We do on-site testing of concrete at whatever scale. A multi-story hotel building or an extension to your bedroom. We can come on site and do the slum tests, your concrete tests, compressive strength tests, so that you can have confidence in what is going into your structure. And we are available not just to do the entire test, but we can do parallel tests. So you might have already engaged another lab, no problem. But given that we are operating at the highest level in Jamaica and the Caribbean, you might want to speak to us and we can do parallel testing just to check that whatever service you're getting outside of this accredited lab is meeting up to your requirement. So we do parallel tests. We can test one in 10 of the trucks that is coming on your site if that is what you desire. There is there is a skill that comes into designing concrete. David is a lecturer at UTech, and he would lecture his engineering students on concrete mix design. It is not always easy to get it perfect. Our laboratories offer a service where you know what you want and you know where you're getting your aggregates from. You can speak to us and we can design the concrete for the structure that you're putting up. Whether it is a large structure or a small structure, because we're not only doing a mixed design on paper, but we're doing the tests to support the mixed design. So you say you want to get a 3000 PSI concrete, and you do a mixed design based on what you learn in school. We can do the tests to support your design on paper, or we can do the design for you. Given that our mantra is making standards work for you, we will put it together so that you can have a mixed design that you're confident in. Because, say for instance, the aggregate. If you get aggregate from Clarendon, it might be different from aggregates from St. Thomas. So on paper, your mixed design for your aggregates in Clarendon or Maypen might have the same numerical value, but the aggregate that's coming from Yalas is slightly different. So we're able to take that headache and the unsurety out of your design. And as I said, it can be a small project. You're extending your driveway, you're putting on a patio, or you're building a bridge. The Bureau Standard has been mandated by the government of Jamaica to provide all citizens of Jamaica, all companies in Jamaica, this quality assurance support. There is a new program that came into place after we gave our guns up. When we stopped being a regulator, we turned to becoming a facilitator, a helper. And we help all industry, including block makers. Now, many block makers don't have the infrastructure to do the tests on their blocks. So we provide a service where a block maker who just get a hand mold and they're in Rockfort, working out of the backyard, they can bring 2 blocks, 3 blocks to us. And we can do the test to see if these 3 blocks, before they go to the market, meeting the requirement of JS35, which is the standard for hollow concrete blocks. So we provide a service where, through the client service program, you can get consultation free of cost to design your mix. We can look on the aggregates, see the proportions, and give you advice. We can also provide tests before you go to mass production of your blocks. Another service we provide is customer complaint investigation. We have had complaints over time that persons order concrete or they ask a contractor to build structure and they're not getting value for money. We can come on site and do investigation based on what you are seeing on the ground. So you might see cracks. So we can do the non-destructive tests. We can also do the visual inspection, and we can cut cores out of the concrete and do tests on them to see if the strength concrete that you paid for, that was promised to you by the supplier, that you had all intention to use for your structure, to see if it is so. So we do complaint investigation to see what is there is what is agreed in your contract. And there are persons who are working on site, but they don't have the requisite skill set to operate at the highest level. We train construction personnel. We have done it in the past, and this is a service that is being rolled out right across the board. Use our services so that, I must confess, I've seen some samples come to our lab for testing from people who should know how to make a concrete cube, and if they were in David's class, they would get a big failure. And those samples are being used to determine the strength of a member. It is very dangerous. So we offer training to personnel. We want to create a culture of quality in Jamaica. We want to say to all Jamaicans, only buy from approved makers of blocks, approved providers of aggregates and steel, whatever building material. If you're not sure, ask us, call us. We have a culture in Jamaica where we look on the bottom line first, second and third before we look on quality. We can't do that. Hurricane Melissa just told us that bottom line, when you skim from up front, is going to cost you significantly down the road, whether in your recurring costs or even loss of life. So we are partnering to create a culture of quality. Test the building components. Design with the building code. The building codes are available. So the Bureau Standard provides the codes. You can come to our library. We have a fancy name for our library, Technical Information Center, because, you know, we don't know how much you can't call it library. But you can come, look on the code before you go into your design. If you need to purchase the code, you can go online and buy them. You can ask us to come and help you with your inspection before you rebuild. You want to know if that crack is going to affect what you need to do in your rebuilding effort. Talk to us. Let us come and take a look. Contractors, contact us. We are here to help. If you look on the slides that I'm showing on screen, bottom left of the slide, each say making standards work for you. We are not just producing standards to put on a shelf and keep in our library. We are here to assist you to move from what is on the text into your structure. We want you to rebuild with standards. Every disaster is an opportunity, and we have an opportunity, whether Hurricane Melissa affected you adversely or you are going to prepare for the next disaster, come talk to us. Let's rebuild together. Let's rebuild with standards. The Bureau is here to make standards work for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Just a note to you, Richard, that there might be, I don't know if it's a fan or something in your background that kind of impacted us, so you might want to adjust that as you're prepared to respond to questions. But thank you. And I invite all of the presenters, if you're able now, to turn your cameras on so that we can just highlight you, spotlight you, as we seek to take some questions. Now, the very first question, and we do have one in the chat, I'm going to just read this question. It comes to us from Andrea W. And just a reminder before I take the question that we have the opportunity to either use the raise hand feature. You can just raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you in the order in which we see them, or we can continue to just drop the questions in the chat. So this first question comes from Andrea W., who says, a slab roof with water pooling and leaking had initial tar scraped off. Roof was not resealed, sanded membrane added to entire roof. Subsequently, walls started to sweat and grow mold. What are some corrective solutions for this? The area is cool and roof still pools in 2 areas. Not sure which of you gentlemen want to take on that question, but that is someone who is experiencing that challenge currently. We acknowledge Mr. Chin and we'll just take your question immediately after this response.
Okay, I think I can provide a response. It may not be the only response. Pleasant morning. I think the indication is that the roof has some, we call depressions, right? It's not flat enough, right? The thing is, what you really want in a roof is that water must be taken off, right? It means that the slope of the roof must be sufficient to get the water off the roof. And that's the first thing, right? So I think that needs to be addressed first, right? You want to ensure that. I don't know if any of the other presenters want to add anything further to that. I could.
Any other responses?
Yes,
Mr.
yes, I'll
Hall.
try as well. Yes, David, you're right. We have a tendency to create a flat external for the roof because sometimes we're planning to continue probably expansion vertically. So they tend to make it flat, but really and truly, it should have a fall of 1 in 200 to get the water off. And we should also bear in mind that the roof itself, the concrete itself, is not a waterproof member. And so you'll need to apply some amount of waterproofing, whether it be silicone, membrane, whatever it is, because the concrete is porous, and we're not making the mixture strong enough. So because of that, it will penetrate. So you have to use some sort of barrier to prevent the moisture from penetrating the concrete.
Thank you, Mr. Allen and Mr. Hall. Thank you for those responses. Mr. Howard Chin, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, with regards to enforcement, this would be addressed to Mr. Dennis Hall. Personally, I've had 2 experiences which I'm not really impressed by the KCMC. One is that the commercial building up in Ligini was undermined by the next door neighbor digging a foundation under his under the building. It's a large warehouse. The KCMC at the time stopped the work, and when they restarted, they said, okay, well, both engineers had to concur. When the engineers of the offending party did something, our engineer did not concur, and it still went ahead. That is one thing. Another thing is that at a different location off Barbican, there is a retaining wall. I got a engineer's report after it was told that by the KCMC that it had a stop order. They kept on working, and I sent photographs to KCMC of the guys doing the thing, and they kept on going. So how strong is your enforcement system?
On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the strongest, I will say we're up in the 4. You see, most of the times we cannot necessarily stop the workmen from working. We can serve the notice, and if they ignore the notice, we serve an enforcement notice. If they ignore the enforcement notice, we have to take it to the lawyers, the attorneys. So it is a process. And so in between all of that, there is some arrangement between probably the offender and the person offended. And by the time it reaches the lawyer, the matter is resolved. But most of the time, we'll definitely forward the matter to the lawyers for them to take it to the court for the judge to make the final decision.
All right, so thank you for that question, Mr. Hall. And if I might just bring it back, acknowledging you, Ms. Fagan, and we'll take your question in a bit. But when we consider the rebuilding efforts that we are encouraging persons to undertake with the standards and to be mindful of the Building Act, if persons should be seen or recognized to be operating outside of what the regulations require, what kind of action, how will we be able to prevent these structures going up? So Mr. Chin has spoken to some situations that have happened in the past, but here we are, we're speaking to people, we're speaking about building better, we're speaking about building within the ambit of the Act. What steps can we take to ensure that we do not have failing structures going forward? And I'm talking now as regulator through the municipal corporations.
Okay. So the first step, as we spoke about in the presentation, is, and Mr. Allen went on it as well, is to ensure that you get a permit. And we spoke about buildings under 300 square meter, wherein architects and engineers, professionals, they are not a part of that because the Act allow technicians, practitioners to manage those. But the fact of the matter is that if at the municipality we recognize that there is some amount of complexity within a design less than 300 meters square, we're going to have you seek the service of an engineer to resolve that issue. So in terms of the examination or the assessment of the applications that are submitted to the council, we try to ensure that the buildings going up, small or large, are certified, for want of a better word, by engineers.
All right, thank you for that question, and we won't put you too much into a PSC interrogation today, but
Right.
I think you recognize that there might be a need for us to review or to seek to strengthen the legislation to support the enforcement efforts. But thanks for that, and we ask Ms. Fagan to go ahead with her question.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. So my question relates to residential construction or rehabilitation. So for the older structures that would have been erected prior to the building code being being revamped, so you may not have the steel as it should be, etc., etc. What are the considerations? So let us say you want to renovate your roof. You want to renovate your roof. You don't know if the walls contain the steel as they should, etc., etc. What would be the considerations for a residential structure such as that? It's older. You're not sure in terms of the resilience of the wall structure, but you have a deteriorating roof and you want to rehabilitate the roof, or you want to renovate. What would be the considerations that you have to bring to the fore if you were to undertake such a project?
My question again. So again, we're gonna have to, I think Mr. Lawrence, was it, that spoke about having the building tested. It is important because if you should submit that application to us to do a re-roof or add a new roof, we're going to recommend that you get an engineer report to determine the integrity of that structure to take that new roof or the additional load. As you said earlier, the structural works inside that building could have been not in sync to today's act, but we're gonna have the engineer determine how to best retrofit and have that building standing up for your new roof.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I see Mr. Lawrence. Let's say that please close your mic. I see Mr. Lawrence unmuting. Can the Bureau of Standards Jamaica provide any support to any homeowner who wants to do some additional building?
Yes, that's the question?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. As Mr. Hall said just now, if you have an existing building, and David can speak to this, there is an existing building code that speaks to what should be done when you are retrofitting or you're improving. So there's an actual code called existing building code. As David was saying, it is not just one or two code. What the Bureau of Standards can do is to assist with assessment of the building as it now pertains and give you a report. David can tell you even more about getting a structural engineer, a professional engineer doing that assessment, and we can work with them as well.
Oh yes, I should add that what Richard indicated is actually true. So for existing buildings, there is a code that speak to building already built, even building, and of course buildings built before the new code comes in. The general principle is that any modification or work on an existing building must comply with current codes, and so that is important. And as Dennis indicated, there's a need for normally a structural engineer's report, some assessment of the structure to find about to determine its condition, because notwithstanding the fact that it's not built to today's code, it could still mean that the building is strong enough, put it that way, or otherwise can be retrofitted to become suitable.
All right, thanks, David. There are some comments in the chat. There is a comment from Brittany Lee who says, should Jamaica's building code be updated to better support new construction projects and designs? So David Allen, serving as consultant to the National Building Code, is there a need, based on where the code is, the entire suite, is there a need for an update?
Yes, the short answer is yes. In fact, the work has begun in terms of looking after Melissa's, the advent of that. The code was reviewed, and in some areas summarized to take account of the high wind speed that we experience in Melissa. So there is a need as well too. And of course, codes doesn't exist in the perpetuity in the version that this is a normal review period, normally every 5 years or so, every 3 years now. But the thing is that the Jamaican building codes have been benchmarked and in fact been prepared in consultation with International Code Council. And the document, and in that organization, normally every 3 years, the codes are reviewed, right? So the fact of review would indicate that we can update them very in a very short time. And so the short answer, as I said, is yes, there's need for review and the work has commenced.
And certainly the Bureau of Standards Jamaica continues to engage and to invite engineers, contractors, developers, people in the industry to make themselves available to sit on the National Building Code Technical Committee, to make themselves available to take best practices to the discussion. And so we welcome participation. Now I see some more comments and questions. I see Andrew, and I think Andrew, while we'll share the question, we may need to have you speak with a professional beyond this session. It says, thank you, read the first question. This was a question regarding the roof. With the membrane currently on the roof, how do you go about getting that 1 in 200 fall? That was a recommendation from Mr. Hall that what is ideal for the roof is 1 in 200. And she's saying, how can you go about getting that with the membrane there? I don't know. How can you adjust? How can you make changes? And then place material above the membrane, or will membrane have to be removed? Oh, so that's a question. Do I place the membrane? Do I have to remove the membrane or place this material to make this 1 in 200 fall?
Well, the fall should have been there before the membrane was applied, so you'd have to think about a way. I'm not sure. She'll have to definitely seek an engineer to assist her with that, a specialist.
All right, so
the way
thanks.
forward.
So
Yes.
thanks, Mr. Hall. Andrea W., we suggest that you engage with an engineer. Maybe, first of all, you can have some discussions with the Bureau of Standards Jamaica through their Testing and Industrial Services branch, and they can give you some guidance as to where to go for some additional support. Before coming to you, Mr. Chin, and I do see your question, there are instances where engineers and architects themselves are not designing and engineering to the code requirements either. This is a comment. A more robust public education campaign is needed, as many of our building practitioners have limited or no knowledge of code requirements. And certainly the BSJ will continue to inform and educate persons about the National Building Code. But I do believe that by and large, most Jamaicans do know that if you're going to build, you need to get approval from the municipal corporations, what used to be the parish councils. But as we also know, many persons will seek to hide away from that. And David spoke to that very eloquently when he spoke about the cost of compliance versus non-compliance, that some persons will seek to avoid doing that which is good until trouble catch them. And so really and truly, we're encouraging people to do what is right. There are costs attached, but the costs attached to doing what is right are much less than when you have to either rectify the damage, as Andrea W. will now have to be considering, or when there might be disaster, or in fact, when the municipal corporations may get to the place where they say to you, this is after going to court, Mr. Hall, they say, demolish. We don't know how long the process will take to get there, and how many lives might be lost in that process. So we're going to take Mr. Chin's comment, and then I'll come to the other questions or comments in the group. Mr. Chin, if
Yes.
another question?
No, it's not. It's a comment. Since I'm on the building code committee, the older buildings which complied before, okay, there's no compliance, or sorry, there's no compulsion to have them brought up to date with the new building code. I had a disagreement with the committee on that. But what is possible is that in an older building, they should get to see if they can comply or bring it into compliance with the current code. That's pretty much it, though. That's all they can do.
Fine. Thank you. And this, of course, would mean drawing on the services of professionals who can look at where the building is now and where it can get to.
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chin, for that intervention. We go back to the chat and we recognize Crystal. And just before, just a reminder to all of us, well, not a reminder, but let me share. We have shared a link in the chat and we invite you to complete the link. It's an evaluation of today's activity, of the presentations made, of the discussions, and how useful it is. We will also share to all the persons who attended, but we do invite you to complete the evaluation link. Very often persons come, appreciate the session, say the session is good, but we don't get the feedback that can help us make decisions about improving and widening our topics. So Crystal says the course should also move more to performance-based versus being prescriptive. And that's a view being put forward by Crystal Lambert. Mr. Lawrence, I don't know if you have instruments, but when there's a feedback when you open your mic.
Okay. All right. So I think I can answer that.
All right, go ahead.
Right. They say the codes are made predominantly to be prescriptive, especially as it relates to the small buildings, right? You must determine what somebody should do that is acceptable. And it's a product of engineering design and, of course, technology over years as to what work. So we want to, by and large, make codes prescriptive. But in the case of being performance-based, now we begin to enter the territory of engineering, right? So if you want to be performance, you're going to have to now include or ensure that you have a design professionals on board, specifically the engineers, right? Because now you're going to have to let whatever obtained be based on design, whether informed by structural or otherwise other calculations or analysis, or by tests being done on model structures, so that at that time you can say that this particular design can work. So first you start with the prescriptive because that is what anybody can do once you follow the prescription. If you don't want to go prescription and performance, then of course the engineers, and that's more costly. So it may seem reasonable to say, yeah, let's go performance, but you can't test the house in certain kind of way, right? Except by some analysis done or model testing, which is a more expensive venture from a perspective of going individually, right? So I appreciate the question anyway.
All right, thanks. Now we saw Nicholas Lee's hand. I don't know if Nicholas still has that question, but I'm just going to share Tanya's comment in the chat, quite lengthy, so just bear with me as I read through this. I'd like to inquire about the applicability of the current Jamaican Building Code to modular homes that are being introduced into the local housing market. So Mr. Allen and Mr. Lawrence, you can prepare to respond to that, as well as Mr. Hall, because I think all of you from your different spaces have some considerations there. Specifically, are modular construction homes required to comply with the same structural, fire safety, electrical, plumbing, hurricane resistance, and occupancy requirements as traditionally constructed homes under the National Building Code of Jamaica? And I think Mr. Lawrence did say in his presentation that it was absolutely essential that for the building systems that would be so, and I expect as well for the modular homes, and they would need to meet those requirements. I would appreciate any guidance on the standards and regulatory requirements governing the design, approval, and the construction of modular homes within Jamaica. So before Richard Lawrence jumps in, Tanya, I suggest to you that you could seek to engage with the BSJ in relation to review of your building system, your modular home, your plan, and that would be the first step. But then the regulators, the municipal corporations will have a hand in it because they are going to be inspecting the process. But the first thing you want to do is to check on the viability of that modular home design for the Jamaican space. And Mr. Richard Lawrence has been good enough to share his email and his telephone number in the chat, and we can refer to it. So Richard Lawrence is, I just read it for those of us who are not seeing it, 876-881-6539, and R. Lawrence at bsj.org.jm. So Tanya, I'm going to invite you, and I will also have your contact information, and I'll pass it on to Mr. Lawrence as well, and you can continue the dialogue there. But certainly it would need to meet the National Building Code and be in line with what our corporations would exist of block and mortar homes. Nicholas, you had your hand up. I don't know if you still want to raise your question. So we do acknowledge you if you still want to raise your question. And if not, there are no other questions. If not, there are no other questions. Oh, yes, please go ahead, Nicholas Lee.
Yeah, man, pleasure, man. I'm Nicholas Lee, acting sergeant.
All right, Garthio, please, if you could just mute. Let me just mute. All right, please go ahead, Nicholas.
A pleasure, man, everyone. So I'm Nicholas Lee, acting sergeant with the code
I'm going
compliance
to
and
ask you if you
enforcement
could just
division.
speak, Nicholas, not hearing you so clearly. Going to ask you if you could just speak a little bit more directly into your instrument.
Is that any better?
It is better.
All right, great. So I'm with the Jamaica Fire Brigade, code compliance and enforcement division. Now, a number of questions were raised about the regulations, performance-based, prescriptive, and stuff along those lines. If you note, in the first presentation, they spoke about the fact that the National Building Code has within the suite of codes the Jamaica Fire Code. And the Jamaica Fire Code, especially if you were to look at Chapter 1, speaks directly to the regulations and the regulatory aspect of adhering to the codes, all of the building codes. The power, if one wants to say, stands with the Jamaica Fire Brigade as it relates to permits and also everything up until we get to legal proceedings as it is laid out in the code. As it relates to prescriptive and performance, the code must uphold the minimum requirements for any form of construction that happens in the country. So it can't be a case where it's a performance thing. It has to have a minimum basis upon which one can be allowed to or be permitted to construct. However, within the state, internationally, there have been cases, and this is general, where the inspectors may allow certain things to happen based on the situation that arises, whether it be land, the material, the area, and that is in line with either safety requirements or building requirements, still adhering to the code. So even though there are minimum requirements in the code, it is possible that sometimes you would not use the exact square footage or the exact form of material, but you find something else that may not be prescribed in the code that also adheres to the minimum requirements. So there are ways and means of allowing construction to happen if there are issues or some differences that may arise. And as I say, it's a minimum, so you can go beyond it if you so desire, as it relates to safety. So I don't know if that gives some people some more framework. There's a lot more dialogue that needs to be had, a lot more that needs to happen as it relates to these codes and the regulation, because stakeholders island-wide need to be aware of the different codes that exist and how they affect them. So I'm glad that these type of forums are now happening so that we can move in that direction.
You're muted, Mr. Ellis.
Thank you. As I was acknowledging Nicholas, thank you for your contribution. And Nicholas, do you sit on one of the committees of the technical committees of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica? I know you said you're from the fire brigade.
So the senior superintendent in charge of this division or this department. She sits on one of the committees. I personally have now just joined one. I can't tell
All
you which one
right.
I'm doing right now, but
Great.
there's a lot to be done right
All
now. There's
right.
a lot to be done.
And we welcome the partnership. We're very happy, and we continue to make the appeal for as many persons as possible to join the technical committees. Now, I see a question here from Crystal, and I'm just going to respond. Crystal says, will local authorities play a more critical role in the review of the building codes? And the entire standards development process, Crystal, is open to the public. Persons may sit on the committee. Persons are invited from the various areas, the Ministry of Local Government, the municipal corporations, the engineers, the architects, the master builders. All persons are invited to sit in this space. And in addition to that, we do also invite the public to make comments when the standards have reached a particular place. They are presented to the public. They're available via our website and in our offices for review. True, we can do some more, and these sessions we are hoping will help. But as persons volunteer, as persons come to these spaces and recognize the need to participate, we welcome you. I see some of our standards officers on, and certainly we can contact Mr. Shane Slater of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. I see Mrs. Nissa Ann Wheeler Russell, and these standards officers will be more than happy to provide additional information to see how we can engage with you and to engage with the rest of the public. Well, Crystal is continuing a debate. I strongly disagree, as international codes are moving to performance-based codes, and we can continue to have that discussion. But what is critical, Crystal, I believe, is one that we continue as the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, working along with partners, the regulators through the municipal corporations, and the other areas. The fire brigade will have to come in and do their assessment. Other persons from other spaces, the electrical regulator will come in and do their part. What is important is that as a country, we begin to, I won't say begin to, we continue to appreciate the value of standards, continue to appreciate the value of standards, and to recognize, even with the passage of Hurricane Melissa, how important it is for us now going forward not to take corners. So hurricane straps, Mr. Hall alluded to 1988 and Gilbert, and hurricane straps became more popular after Hurricane Gilbert. And as we have the challenges, we are able to find better ways, best practices that we can incorporate. So there continues to be improvement, there continues to be work, and it's all of us together sharing in the dialogue. And I'm really very happy to see the level of participation. We'd love to have more persons, but we'd like to engage some more with our municipal corporations and our government entities and our developers. The Bureau of Standards Jamaica is always prepared to participate, to use or to identify technical people to come and make presentations and to help in the process of information. And we thank you very much. So as we draw to the close of the event again, or of this activity, let me thank you for participating. Let me encourage you to complete the evaluation, and I will just share the evaluation again in the chat and ask you again to complete the evaluation. Thanks to all of our presenters and to all of you participants for what I consider a very engaging discussion this morning. We continue to encourage you to complete the evaluation. But as we conclude today's session, I thank you again, Mr. David Allen. I thank you, Mr. Dennis Hall. I thank you, Mr. Richard Lawrence, and your several teams in terms of your support persons who would have helped in presenting and just organizing to ensure that you're here today. Let me also extend, in his absence, thanks to Mr. Dwight Wilson of the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, who today I believe has to be participating in the Diaspora Conference. for sharing your expertise and helping us better understand the critical role standards, codes, quality assurance, and compliance play in creating a safer and more resilient community or country. Thanks to every single participant for investing your time and contributing to today's discussion. To those of you who asked questions, who made comments, thank you so very much. As we listened, the message from today's session is clear. Resilient communities are built intentionally, deliberately so. They are built through proper planning, sound engineering, good quality materials, effective oversight, and adherence to standards. At the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, we remain committed to supporting national development by promoting standards and quality infrastructure that safeguard lives, property, and investments. That's what we are doing here today. So let us continue to build wisely, to build safely, and most importantly, whether we are building or rebuilding, to do that with standards. Thank you for joining us. Have a productive day, and please stay safe throughout this hurricane season and do what we can now to secure our property. This now brings the Bureau of Standards Jamaica online awareness session, Rebuild with Standards, to a close. It's midday. Good day, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you too.
Thanks for having us. Good day, everyone.
And just to acknowledge that the presentation will be uploaded to the BSJ's website and YouTube channel, and you will be able to access it. Thanks, Garthia, for coming, and we appreciate it. No problem. Thank you so much.